Well, welcome to our third part of our programme, the Weekend Debate. And I was going to start a subject matter about the media, because we've ended on that. And he's rolling his eyes, but you seem to know more than other people. You seem to know that MTTV was coming to a close before other people were.
Well, it shows how appalling the media is in the Isle of Man, that you didn't even know the plug was going to be pulled on it. I think it's a great shame, to be perfectly honest. If Manx Telecom wanted to save money, they could have got rid of that stupid bauble they've got turning outside the place. In fact, I was so incensed when I heard that, it confirmed that the rumour that MTTV was going, that I almost drove up there in the car and pushed the thing off that stupid fountain it's spinning on. But I've just bought a new car, so I didn't decided not to.
If I can be fair, it was probably ending last year. We got an extra year out of it. The company's a different company to what it was. When this whole thing was set up, the media was quite different. And I could see the end. And Mark, you've worked with me on this.
It's done an excellent job. I mean, and I'm not saying that because now it's
I know you wouldn't.
I said to you 2 years ago at Hango Hill, if you recall, when one of the colleagues in Tynwald...
Chris Thomas?
No, the MLC, Kerry Sharp, had been talking about the big tent idea for the media. Yeah. Remember, we discussed that down there, and I said that, there should be... I didn't support that idea, but I thought that there should be a bit more inter-cooperation between the media, and I cited then the diverse amount of material that you'd done at MTTV, of course, including the Rumble in the Jungle with Charles Gard.
Classic.
When are you going to have Charles on here? That's the problem.
No point. But we are.
Love to. I really would.
The point is, though, we're living in a different world. When it was launched, 2011, 2012, online media was a brand new thing. The conventional sit down at 6 o'clock and watch the news, and that's your news. It's a very different world now.
Some of us are still in that world.
Well,
it's getting less all the time, though, isn't it?
In with the new. But,
you don't. You don't. You watch the stuff as and when it comes.
Absolutely, but we're living in a different landscape, and the rise of social media. We've all got Facebook, or we've all got access to Twitter. We can see the latest news up to date, and it's so easy now for the radio stations and other news providers to provide video. And as I say, it's a very different world.
And that's we need it fact checked, because you're saying that everyone relies on social media, but sometimes that isn't from a solid news source. Absolutely. That it isn't actually fact. That's when fake news runs around the world.
Mainstream media is important. It really is. Yeah. If only to counter some of the stuff that's on Facebook from people like me.
Yeah.
But no, it is. Yeah, seriously, it is important.
We do need that, and that needs investment and money. And I wouldn't say that Manx Telecom, that its primary business has ever been as a news provider. So what started as a website, and I agree, I think that through those years, you have added an element that the Isle of Man should be really grateful for. And in terms of documenting unedited question time in Tynwald, I think that has really opened the eyes of Manx public who can't, who are working or in different parts of the island, attend in person, for how that actually works. But I think, if you look at Westminster, Scotland, other jurisdictions, there is a live TV feed from Parliament, which we don't have. So do we think that is a lack on the Isle of Man? Who's going to fill that gap? Are you planning to continue as Isle of Man TV?
Well, I mean, there is Isle of Man TV, which is this is the sort of movement, but I do need funding. This is turning into like a plea, but seriously, I do need funding.
Chamber of Commerce, they're the people you should speak to. I know them well. I'll put a word in for you.
Yeah, definitely. I love doing it, but it does need funding at some point.
It needs funding, but also, I mean, news organisations have insurance behind them for defamation cases, libel cases.
Don't let me get me going. The insane thing in the Isle of Man is we export millions to the UK for the BBC.
The licence fee.
Yeah.
Here we go.
And then we pay for Manx Radio. Whereas if we paid them a fair whack, just said to them, look, we'll pay a fair whack for the signal that's coming in. If you want to take your transmitters away, take them away. But it's got to be fair. And the rest of the money was used for domestic mainstream. And I mean, the print media is still important. The print media is going to need support, or there'll be no print media on the island. I don't see why Manx Radio should get the money it does, and there's no support for the independents. It should be seen as a media strategy from government.
The Kerry Sharp idea roughly was on that line, which you don't like, wasn't it? To have a sort of interaction with all be done C-terminal in one room working together.
Yeah, that's the bit I didn't like about it.
I love that.
I think you need the
it's
different
difficult
voices.
enough with you in the room at the moment with the rest of them.
I think you need different voices for media. I wouldn't like that the media was all one provision.
No.
That wouldn't be healthy.
But haven't you got that now? Because you've got this person that BBC pays for to do all the local politics stuff,
the
right?
Local democracy.
Yeah, local democracy reporter, which is now Chris Cave.
In the UK, coming back to where you are, in the UK, the government doesn't just fund the BBC. It supports Channel 4, and it supports S4C, and it supports the other offshoot derivatives of the BBC broadcasting in Gaelic, for example, in Scotland. So there is a balance. Now, the BBC have responded to this sort of because they knew there was going to be pressure on them by bringing in this local democracy reporter.
And there's a few around the UK.
But to be blunt, I mean, I don't know why the Isle of Man government doesn't have a proper media strategy. But I can understand Alf Cannon not wanting to go down that road because he's already shoveling money up to Douglas Head. And I support Manx Radio, by the way. I don't like the way it's being run at the moment, and its news output is being dumbed down in my view, but I support Manx Radio. I mean, the Nationalist Party, when there was a mood over here to privatise Manx Radio, to sell it off to chappie, whose name I forget now.
Kreisky.
Brian Kreisky, yeah. We went and spoke to Brian and battered for Manx Radio at that time. So I support...
But that was then and this is now, isn't it?
Yeah,
There's two different things.
But we still need Manx Radio. There's a lot of people enjoy the output that comes from
as a public
Manx
service broadcaster or playing music as well? Or I mean, should they be more defined?
A bit of both. But the public service broadcasting news side, in my view, is not as good as it was. And if you had Charles Gard here, I would say that. I would say that too.
This is like a mandate now we're getting to.
Yeah,
right?
and I mean,
David Collister and Charles Gard doing mandate has not been matched. But you also have to say, in the modern world where they are fighting for ratings, I'd be very loath to comment on their new
That was to do with
formats.
personality, though, as well, wasn't it? Both Charles and David were no-nonsense people. I mean, if they were questioning me in the union office, or if they were questioning Miles Walker up the hill, they would be direct at you with the questions. And I'm afraid...
But they've had Dolan, and it's a pity that he's moved on, but Beth Espy is also... I find her a really challenging news journalist when she's in that role.
Well, she's now playing...
I've heard her on the news once or twice.
Yeah, no, but quite often now it's changed to find the missing person or missing place thing.
I mean, I find it amazing, just talking to members of the public, as I was the day that you sort of said to me to come on the programme, that you are viewed as a hair shirt, because I see you as fairly sort of balanced in your approach to politicians. Some of the public, well, you might read comments yourself on Facebook and that, saying, Moulton, where's he coming from? Why did he ask that question? And so on. That's come about because there's a public perception now that journalists shouldn't ask awkward questions and get an answer. I mean, I watched you the other day talking to Tim Baker. That was a bit like watching paint dry.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that I'm doing, right, which I do feel that there's a need for it. I don't know, Mark, how do you treat news in the modern day? I mean, you're going to take over. Yeah, he's been interviewed him first in 14, 15, and he sort of joined me, and it's just been part of a team, really.
Lingering, yeah. No, I am... What I said there earlier, public service media as such has changed, and the role of media has changed over the past couple of years. The Isle of Man's quite unique. We've got 3 commercial radio stations essentially for a population of 80,000. That's, well, it wouldn't happen in the UK. Really, you wouldn't get that.
Is it sustainable?
Well, that's a commercial matter for the Turners and the Ron Berries. But I think it's interesting when you look at the demographics and how we consume media now, especially my sort of age group. I'm probably unique in the sense that I still, listen to the radio occasionally, but most of my stuff I get through Twitter or Facebook, through, authorised, BBC, Manx Radio, mainstream media.
Not fake news sources.
But they're all using the social media.
Absolutely, and that's important. But what is also, and I think it's quite sad, is when a lot of the comment sections on Manx forums and Facebook. I mean, some of these matters, like, I thought...
I think it's hilarious, Manx.
Well, it is, but
there's real humour there.
It's critical of everything.
They never have a nice thing to say, do you, really? Well, I did get one the other day. I think
sort of, moving it...
pretty good.
moving it slightly just away from media to an extent. When you had the whole Black Lives Matter movements going on over the summer, the amount of racist and really backward views that were just being publicly aired on these social media platforms. And I think what social media, Facebook has really done, and I think once everyone's been locked inside it, and I think it's demonstrated and it's revealed aspects of the Isle of Man culture and psyche that might be quite low level for a while, but now, because everyone has a voice on one of these things, they can air those views.
Yeah, but there's not manifest intolerance here. I don't believe even.
But you've never experienced that, though. Surely.
Well, back in the days when we were fighting for the right for people to be able to individually petition the European Court, when we were campaigning over gay rights. Remember when Stonewall came over here to have a meeting, and what's his name?
Alan Shea.
Alan couldn't get anybody to chair. He came into Transport House. He couldn't get anybody to chair a meeting at the museum, and he said, "Would you be prepared to chair it?" I said, "Of course I will." Yeah. And that meeting was a very well attended meeting. There were obviously diverged views there, but for the most part, I found that there wasn't any kind of manifestation of overall intolerance in the island at that time.
So do you think there's racism on the Isle of Man? And do you think there's still homophobia on the Isle of Man?
Absolutely, but I mean,
overwhelming
anybody who stuck their head up, even sort of prior to the last election, and sort of aired racist views didn't make it at the polls, as far as I'm aware.
There were some very racist views on the hustings. Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's interesting. In the Isle of Man, we still use the term "come over," and there's a boat in the morning. It's quite a nationalist. I appreciate you are a nationalist.
Oh yeah, be careful here.
But it's quite when you think about it. If you said though, if you were in England and you went, go home, there's a boat in the morning and all this sort of stuff.
Generally, if you don't like it, I am a come over, and I've had that said to me. But I agree, there's some that was under the radar.
Absolutely, yeah.
But now it's amplified because everybody has a voice, and social media has done that. But that's not unique to the Isle of Man. If you look at some of the abuse, people taking Twitter holidays because of the trolling they get for a single comment sometimes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or not being on message in terms of, well, it was called political correctness, things woke now.
I don't think there's anything wrong with terms like come over anyway. I mean, my family were come overs here in the early 1800s.
Some come-overs I know become more nationalistic on the Isle of Man's behalf than others. But I think it's about building a community, and tolerance and integration and equality plays an enormous part in that. And then we get back, what I think is the real difference here is the social inequalities that drive that kind of intolerance, if you like. And that's the thing that we need as a government and as a society to get rid of.
Good illustration was work permits. When I was at the union, there was a lot of support for work permits. I wasn't really in favour of work permits. I saw it as a crude form of immigration control. And I thought, well, if you're going to control immigration, why don't you go the whole hog and have immigration control? But I had to go to, because the union policy was to support work permit, I had to go to the committee that was looking into it and present the case for retention of work permits. But at that time, interestingly, the most enthusiastic people for work permits in the union were folk who'd done the 10 years then. It was a 10-year qualifying period before I think it's 5 now. They were the most enthusiastic. People who'd come here as residents and, if you like, gone native. People arrive on the island as come-overs, to use the term that you've just used, and in no time at all, they're integrated into the community. The ones that I don't particularly like are the Flash Harrys who come in here or Flash Alice's, who come in here and then go out again after using the place for a while.
They mostly go to Jersey, don't they?
Yeah.
Those ones anyway. We don't seem
And-
to trans same level.
And leave a legacy. I'll say no more. Just look at Facebook.
So, overall, the media doing a good job here in the Isle of Man? I mean, we've got a
We've
lot
got
of...
a very diverse media. I mean, you remember that I brought a motion to have a select committee look into the funding and operation of Manx Radio, and typically I'm never elected to go on the committee because usually the whole of Comyn don't want me on a select committee asking questions. I didn't get on. Alex Allenson chaired the committee. The report I found a bit bizarre. I don't think it addressed the points that I hoped would have been addressed. So in terms of, they're saying every 5 years, oh no, not another review of Manx Radio. But I think at the minute it's neither one thing nor the other. So it's got the commercial aspects, it's got, they would say, I think, inadequate funding for where their projections put it. So, and I think we're really well served by the radio, especially as has been demonstrated through the pandemic and any crisis
Well, you need
that comes on.
next year.
But 3FM,
Your own show.
3FM
Even
and
though
Energy,
you haven't made up your mind, you're standing
I
there.
also think it's really important to notice that 3FM and Energy are playing to other audiences. And you remember that 3FM tried an evening news bulletin that was a video news bulletin. I mean, maybe they were a bit too ahead
Oh, you
of their
mean
time.
well, that was why
yeah.
MTTV started, because
Yeah.
Shaw were doing
Yeah.
IMTV.
But in Jersey, Guernsey, they have Island TV and they have BBC, so they have an ITV and a BBC
Yeah, they've got a
provision.
tremendous investment from the BBC
And
as
that's
well.
enormous amount of jobs. When we went down there, they
Yeah.
had 22 journalist jobs just in media.
And weirdly, the
that's an incredible...
The BBC only started something like 12, 13 years ago, because ITV had been there since the late 50s, maybe early 60s, and the BBC
So you
invested
think
that money in
we're
it.
paying the same amount in the licence fee. I mean, I do think the licence fee's worth it for Radio 4, BBC Radio generally. And we have people based here, but...
Tindall doesn't grasp the nettle. The House of Keys, you shouldn't be moving motions to have the Chief Minister sort of dethroned. You should be saying...
I'm not moving that motion, just to be clear.
you should be
sort out
saying
the process.
sod off BBC, no more licence, Alf.
So the proposal for Manx Radio, which I contributed to, which Charles Gard took massive exception to, was actually quite logical. Come out of the commercial world, be a public service broadcaster,
No, Charles-
concentrate on that. He didn't like that.
Charles was defending the station. You were coming across. You walked right into that. I thought.
I didn't know anything about it, to be fair. I thought I was doing a nice little interview. You must check it out.
He's
You will
going to
see
get
it.
this. I thought, because you
It was brilliant.
were chipping away at Manx Radio. Now it's all right for me to chip at Manx Radio or chip at you or anybody else, but you're in the media club, if you like,
Right.
and then you've got to pitch up sort of and appear to be objective. And I mean, it's what I said about Charles before. What you see is what you get. He came back straight at you. I loved it. It should be put on as...
It's in my top of all time, to be honest.
Yeah.
But on a serious note, this finish with this bit. Manx Radio got this 200,000 extra during the lockdown. Does anyone actually know what was going on there? Because I mean, I could run my TV station on a quarter of that, that sort of thing.
See, you're not
it's
really
very well. I am, because it's my one chance to have
I'll
a
just
question.
get
You
Charles
guys,
on the line.
Capping.
do you think other people? This is a question. Should get public service money then?
Well, you go back 10 years before everyone was able to access media, multimedia for themselves. The newspaper was the go-to place for the public notices. Every planning application had to be advertised. So there was a significant income to the newspaper from advertising, from government money requirements and public. That is all gone. And I struck you saying that without support we could lose the print media on the island. Obviously there's Portfolio, there's other magazines
I think it'd be
too.
a disaster.
I do. The Isle of Man has had this massive tradition, 150, 200 years of having newspapers provided, and that is on the record forever. We don't know how much of the other media will be retained for the public records going back.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that we have a many different voices in terms of media, multimedia in terms of newspapers, TV, radio, and a diversity in the radio operations as well.
Your question there about should all the providers get the public service broadcasting money. Well,
If they do public service broadcasting, obviously.
the question has to be, why wouldn't you want that? Like you were saying earlier about, Channel 4 in the UK is a public service broadcaster.
It should be the case. But
And Channel 4's always been edgy, it's always been a bit out there, and that's a good.
that was their job to be.
But it represents a demographic of the society, and that's what it should do. The government and all, all the bells and whistles that go along with it should represent what the Isle of Man is in 2020.
The existing model is broken. Manx Radio don't get enough money, actually, to do the job they should be doing. the BBC get far too much money for a job that they're not doing at all. And that's no disrespect to BBC Ellen Vannon. I mean, why do they call it that? This is the Isle of Man. The folk who work up there, they're very nice. The odd time I've had a link up to some programme across and I've done it from their studio. They're very competent, very sound people. It's not a criticism of the people, either at Manx Radio or at the BBC. It's a criticism of the way the government's allowed the broadcasting model to develop or the media model to develop.
And that
we cannot send 4 or 5 million or whatever it is, try and find out from Elf how much it is, over to the UK and also pay $1 million to Manx Radio.
Media,
you could fund Manx Radio properly and also have a general media fund.
Not to keep me going? No.
To keep other media going, including newspapers.
I would hope that there'd be one of the spin-offs of that would be there'd be some competition for you.
Should I wait for Charles God to ring me to get a job up there? No, I'm joking. Media developing very quickly. Jeff, let's just throw that one in the mix. They've taken on an Isle of Man reporter, Isle of Man newspaper's reporter now. I think that's out there. Of
course,
that story.
I call it.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you think? I mean,
I think
media,
journalists, professionals are free to move to and fro. That's how you develop your career. I mean, I went in PR because in those days most media
it's Howard's Facebook of choice, isn't it? It's so patronising. I mean, it not that it would happen, but if Howard had said to the Celtic League, would you like to come to the debates and ask questions because you produce a magazine and have done for the last 30 odd years that goes into all the major libraries in the world, including university libraries, would you like to come along? I'd have said no because I wouldn't be patronised.
But you know what though, I think sometimes I think during the other week on this show said it's sort of, I think the journalists here and people working in the media do live in a bit of a bubble.
What we need is a spoof journalist.
Do live in a bit of a bubble. You're obsessed. You're honestly
welcome to my world.
Just like this.
Yeah. No, go on, finish point.
I'll just get like a fake moustache next
week. Finish your point. We're running out of time.
Fake glasses. No, I think sometimes the journalists live in a bit of a world of their own, like with Lettergate. Everyone was obsessing over that letter. I mean, it was a bit. I'm not going to go into it, but it was there was a big obsession over it. And I think with Jeff, at the end of the day, they were called a PR company, and they're not anymore.
They're a news agency.
At the end of the day, I'm not obsessed. Don't worry.
You were obsessed. No, I'm not. To David Ashford, I thought it was great. You kept going on about letters.
No, I didn't. I didn't obsess.
Yes, you interviewed him the other day for me.
Using your words, I weaved into the.
Right. Yeah.
He's written down everything you said about him. He's remembered every word.
I don't know, but it's a fundamental point here. Jeff Monge's I quite like some of their articles. I think it represents a different demographic of the Isle of Man, and. I don't know about if they were a PR company or they were paid. I'm not too sure. But let's not forget, I think, is it 3FM have got the Department for Enterprise logo on all,
they do some
all their
videos.
Promotional
videos.
I don't know if that's paid or whatnot, but
it must be because it's got
government.
Government
on
government invest in all the media. Well, you were saying before about Isle of Man newspapers. That although a lot of that income is now gone, it depended on that income for a while, and I presume even some of these weird things that you only find in waiting rooms in solicitors' offices,
like
these
gallery
portfolios,
the 365 or whatever it's called.
Business 365.
Doesn't Simon produce that?
Are you in solicitors' offices a lot then?
Yeah, quite frequently. Yeah, not as often these days. I haven't had any injunctions since I left the union.
I'm going to wrap this up now. Thank you everyone for coming today. It's been very interesting. And yes, my phone number's available to keep this channel on the air. I can't do any more, can I? If people like it, they do.
Well done, Paul.
Like
do
you want the £20 now?
I may be looking for donations.
It used to be the other way around. When you on the telly, a guy would come up to you at the end, and it was certainly with the BBC, and say, "Just sign there, will you?" Next thing, the cheque came through.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
Those were the days.
Still happens, actually. Still happens. Anyway, thank you very much indeed. Mark, in a couple of weeks, is going to be presenting. We thought we'd give the youth a different aspect, although it could be on anything. You can pick your subjects. As always, Bernie, we look forward to the write-up of this. It will get written up, will it? You'll write this up fair and balanced?
Yeah, I'll have to write...
Can I not be called Borat, please?
All right.
I've got ID to show that my name is Mark O'Connor.
He's got to learn. He's got to learn.
I liked his term for me, though.
What have you called?
That was the...
What?
I'll have to play it back. It was very complimentary.
God, I'll have to watch the programme now.
Thank you very much indeed. That's it for this week.